All right, this is the part 2 of chapter 7.1. Let's get started. All right, so number 40. So we know this is sine negative 18 degrees. Okay, so sine negative 18 degrees. Since this is not one of the special right triangles, so you don't have to actually give out a value for each side. I'm just going to keep it as x, y, r. So we know that sine is negative y over r in quadrant 4. So inverse sine is going to be, so you got negative y over r. There are two possible triangles you can come up with negative y over r, but don't use the quadrant 3. You're going to have to focus on the quadrant 4. So it's just going to be negative 18 degrees, which is negative pi over 10 radians. Okay, so let's look at the next one. So number 44. So look at this. This is sine 495 degrees. So we know that if you spin the first 360 degrees, you're going to give yourself second spin of 135 degrees. Okay, so this is basically 135 degrees counterclockwise. All right, so that's going to give you sine 135 is going to give you 1 over rad 2. Okay, so the inverse sine of 1 over rad 2, you're going to get two possible right triangles. Don't focus on the one in quadrant 2, so use the quadrant 1. So that's going to give you 45 degrees, which is pi over 4. All right, so let's look at number 46. 46, this is a cosine and 210 degrees. So that means that it's going to be a right triangle with theta is 30 degrees in quadrant 3. Okay, so cosine is negative rad 3 over 2. Okay, so the inverse cosine of that is going to be, okay, so we know that negative rad 3 over 2, you're going to get two possible right triangles. Don't use the one in quadrant 3, use the one in quadrant 2. Okay, so you're going to have your answer as, this is going to be a 30-degree theta, so which means that from the 0 to 30, you're actually going counterclockwise for 150. So answer is going to be 150 degrees, which is 5 pi over 6 radians. Okay, so let's look at 54. So this one, you know that this is basically saying tangent 270 degrees. So you're going clockwise 270. So you end up at where x equals to 0 and y equals to 1. Okay, so you know that tangent is y over x. So in this case, it's 1 over 0. Okay, so now we're going to analyze the tangent negative, I should call it the inverse tangent 1 over 0. But look at this 1 over 0. This is undefined. Okay, so your answer for this is going to be undefined. Okay, that's your answer right here. So let's look at number 56. Okay, so number 56, this time you're going to have to analyze which triangle am I using here. So we know that inverse cosine is negative 2 over 3. So you got two possible ratio for that. You can write out two triangles for that ratio. Okay, don't use the one in quadrant 3. Okay, so we're going to use the focusing on the quadrant 2 triangle. But if you look at the ratios, it doesn't fit any of the special right triangles. So in here, we know we're going to be focusing on the quadrant 2 triangle, but I don't know what the measure is. So I'm going to call it just theta. Okay, theta equals to whatever. You don't have to worry about it. Okay, so now let's go with cosine theta. Okay, focusing on this theta right here. So what is the cosine theta? You're going to use negative 2 over 3, x over 3. So that would be your answer. Okay, so let's look at number 58. So this time we got tangent negative 2. Okay, so tangent negative 2, you need to know that it's y over x. So let me give you two possible triangles. So y over 2, you could have negative 2 over 1. Okay, or you can have 2 over negative 1. If it's a 2 over negative 1, this is going to be in quadrant 2. For the one with negative 2 over 1, it's going to be in quadrant 4. Okay, you definitely want to use the quadrant 4. Okay, that's why this one is going to be eliminated. All right, so I don't care what the measure of this because it's not one of the special right triangles. So you want to keep this as just the pi. Okay, but we know that we're going to be focusing on the triangle in quadrant 4. So tangent theta is going to be negative 2, which is the y, over 1, which is the x. Okay, so it's going to be negative 2. Okay, so on number 64, we're going to do something a little different. So you have to find the inverse. Okay, so this is how you're going to do it. First of all, understand that f of x is basically your y. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite as y equals to 2 tangent x minus 3. Okay, and then this is what you're going to do. You're going to swap the x and y positions. So you're going to rewrite this as x equals to 2 tangent y minus 3. Now we're going to isolate the y. Okay, so I'm going to add 3 on both sides, and then I'm going to divide it by 2 later. Okay, so this is how it's going to look. You're going to have x plus 3 over 2 equals to tangent y. So in order to isolate y, you're going to put inverse tangent on both sides. Okay, and that's going to cancel and get your y isolated. So y, let me rewrite this. So y is going to equal to inverse tangent x plus 3 over 2. Okay, next one you want to do, let's just go a little faster with this. So this is y equals to 3 sine 2x. Okay, I'm going to swap the position of 2 and y. So it's going to be x equals to 3 sine 2y. Okay, now let's just go ahead and isolate the y. So you're going to, you're going to divide it by 3 on both sides. So I have x over 3 equals to sine 2y. Okay, I'm going to put the inverse on both sides. So inverse sine on both sides. So it's going to cancel out with the sine. And then you're going to divide it by 2 on both sides. So your y is going to equal to sine negative 1, x over 3, everything over 2. Okay, what you should do is rewrite the y as f of negative 1 of x. Okay, that's your inverse function. Okay, so let's look at number 70. So this time it's the same thing. We're going to be doing the same thing over and over again. Okay, so I'm going to just swap the x and y. So x equals to 2 cosine 3y plus 2. Okay, now just isolating the y again. Divide by 2, divide by 2, cancel. And then I'm about to, I'm just do everything once. So do the inverse cosine on both sides. Okay, so let me stop there and just rewrite it. Okay, equals to 3y plus 2. Now I'm going to be subtracting 2 on both sides and then divided by 3 later. Okay, so this is what you guys going to get. So you're going to get y equals to cosine -1 x over 2 minus 2, everything divided by 3. Okay, let's go back and erase the y and put the inverse, the inverse function. Okay, that will be an answer. Okay, so let's look at number 72. You have to find the exact value of this. So first thing you want to do is you go ahead and divide it by 2 on both sides. Okay, cancel. You got cosine, well, inverse cosine x equals to pi over 2. So this is pi over 2. Okay, so next thing I want to do is put cosine on both sides. That cancels out with the inverse cosine. So your x is going to equal to cosine pi over 2. So we know that x equals to 0 and then r equals to 1. So x is going to equal to 0 over 1, which equals to 0. All right, so let's look at the number 72. So you want to divide it by -6 on both sides. So inverse sine 3x equals to negative pi over 6. So this is negative pi over 6. Okay, job is not done. Let's just put the sine on both sides. So that cancels out with the inverse sine function. So now I have 3x equals to sine negative pi over 6. Okay, I know that 3x is going to equal to, we know that negative pi over 6 is -1, that's y value, over 2, that's r. Okay, and then go ahead and multiply by 1/3 on both sides. Okay, so now I can isolate my x. So your x is going to go to -1 over 6. All right, so let's look at the last question. So number 78. It looks like it's going to be a little crazy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, there's a lot of different ways you can do this. I'm just going to add 2 pi on both sides. Okay, so this is cancel. Once again, you have multiple ways to do this. Next thing I want to do is to move this to the other side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 2 inverse sine x on both sides. Okay, so these are going to be canceled. So I'm going to get 3 inverse sine x is equal to negative pi. Okay, so this is negative pi. All right, so sorry, that's not negative pi, my bad. So let's do one more. Divided by 3. Okay, so this is actually negative pi over 3. So we have inverse sine x equals to negative pi over 3. Next thing I want to do is put the sine on both sides. Okay, so that cancels out with the inverse sine. So I have x, now it's isolated, equals to sine negative pi over 3. So x is going to equal to, so sine is y over r. So in this case, it's negative rad 3 over 2. Okay, that's your answer right there. Okay, that's it for the chapter 7.1. I wish you guys good luck.